Life is a gift for which we are grateful. When a life ends, we gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. James Gerald Jack Smith has died. On this day, we gather to remember, we gather to mourn, but mostly we gather to give thanks. To give thanks for Jack, to give thanks for family and friends, to give thanks for lives well lived. Indeed, we gather to give thanks for the gift of life itself. So we'll begin with this poem from the Unitarian poet E.E. Cummings. I carry your heart with me. I carry it in my heart. I am never without it. Anywhere I go, you go, my dear. And whatever is done by only me is your doing, my darling. I fear no fate, for you are my fate, my sweet. I want no world, for beautiful, you are my world, my truth. And it's you are whatever a moon has always meant, and whatever a sun will always sing is you. Here is the deepest secret nobody knows. Here is the root of the root and the bud of the bud and the sky of a tree called life, which grows higher than the soul can hope or the mind can hide. And this is the wonder that's keeping the stars apart. I carry your heart. I carry it in my heart. We have a hymn entitled Morning Has Broken. I believe you can easily keep your seats, and we'll see the lyrics on the board. On the TVs, thank you. Thank you, Marianne. Morning has broken. James Gerald Smith was born in Racine, Wisconsin on August 3rd, 1919, into a Roman Catholic family. Young Jack attended 8 years of Catholic grade school and then entered the public system to graduate from high school in 1936 at age 16. He worked for a couple of years to save money. What better education can you get than that? And then entered the University of Wisconsin in the mechanical engineering program. In his freshman year there, he met, and in his senior year, 1941, married Ms. Josephine Pace. Jack and Joe would have 3 great children, Jerry, Judy, and Jay. Late in 1941, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor changed the whole world, and the ramp up to World War II in American industry anyway meant a dire need for engineers. Jack interviewed with Wright Aeronautical and was hired immediately. So Jack and Joe moved to New Jersey. Jack was placed in charge of a small lab to study a problem they're having with the ignition system of the company's airplane engines. What they knew was that for some reason, all the planes fitted with new replacement engines were cutting out just after takeoff and crashing into the sea just in front of their aircraft carrier. Jack was very proud and would often tell the story of being one of 3 engineers who figured that problem out, fixed it, and stopped those planes from crashing into the sea. When the war was over, Jack joined the DuPont Corporation in Wilmington, Delaware. In his dream job at his dream location, the Engineering Development Lab, he was thrilled to work on a plethora of problems from all over the company, especially the hardest ones that the departmental engineers couldn't solve. Jack's knack for innovative thinking brought him 10 patents for his efforts. When he tried to retire after 27 years there, he was asked to stay on as a consultant for another 10 years, finally retiring in 1982. Jack and Joe moved to Florida in 1985 and to Northport in 2003. Joe died in 2004. Jack started attending the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Venice in 2005, as he would say, largely because daughter Judy said that's what he should do. Thank goodness for us, because at UCOV, Jack met Jeannie McIntyre, and Jack and Jeannie have been a couple since 2006. I'll share with you a paragraph that Jack wrote in his biography for the church records here. He said, "In my years, I have seen change in almost every aspect of life. Communication's a good example. Radio was in its infancy back then, television non-existent. Phone service was from a box or a cumbersome phone set plugged into the wall, mostly without any private lines. Transportation, too. When my father bought a car in 1924, he picked up the car and had to drive it across town himself to have the bumpers installed. At that time, public transportation was all streetcar, bus, train. Lindbergh had not made his transatlantic flight. All airplanes still had propellers. I can only imagine. But I guess when you lived 102 years, you must see all kinds of changes. I first met Jack when I arrived in Venice in 2014. The very first time we talked, he told me about how happy he was with that little white Corvette he'd bought for his 90th birthday. And of course I was impressed. However, he said, being a forward-thinking guy like he was already considering trading it in on a Maserati for his 95th. Then when I asked him at his 95th birthday how those plans were going, he told me he was still trying to decide among the new models of Maserati. When he had his stroke a couple of years later, he talked about how remembering that little Corvette out in the driveway was motivating him to keep working on his regimen of physical therapy. He knew he needed to get better so that he could get down into, and maybe more importantly, up out of his car. By the time he was indeed better, and he worked at it hard, he had realized the ongoing difficulty of driving at all. He was then 98, I believe. And so I understand the car was shipped out to his son Jay. Now, another topic of conversation between him and me was his jewelry. Not so much the jewelry itself, but he did wear that pendant an awful lot. But the way he made his jewelry. I had asked how he did such a thing, and he said, "Oh, it's an obscure process called the lost wax casting process." And I said, "Hey, I learned about that in engineering school myself." So we found something else that we had a little bit in common. Jay's recent death was difficult for Jack, as it has been for a lot of people. I know that Jack struggled with losing Jay, struggled with all those why questions that arise at such a time. I was glad that Jack could openly grieve Jay's loss and talk about it a little bit with some folks. In my conversations with him then, I told Jack that I'd heard of an ancient Chinese blessing that went, grandfather die, father die, son die. It's called a blessing because that's the natural order of things. It's the way we want things to go. If you get that order messed up, it's a curse. No one should have to bury a child, and I'm so sorry that Jack had to do such a thing. When I heard recently that Jack had entered hospice care and was not doing particularly well, I went for a visit, sort of expecting that he might be less with it than usual. It was at that visit that I learned more about orchids than I ever thought I needed to know. To me, Jack was like that. Give him a topic: orchids or airplanes, engineering or golf, jewelry or sculpture or painting or cross-stitch. You were just bound to learn something from his knowledge and experience and stories. I know that Jack had a soft spot in his heart for this congregation and for the friends he made here. I know he loved his family dearly. I know he loved Jeannie. And I do believe he loved life because it showed in the way he lived it. I will miss him terribly. reflections. First, Bill Harrison.
Just going to do a mic check here. Can you hear me? I first met Jack in the fall of 2013 when, as a newcomer to UCOV, I decided to join a spiritual fellowship group. Pat Schwing, who is here today, placed me in a mixed group, which at the time consisted of 6 women plus Jack. It gets better. I was nervous about entering a long-existing group where I knew no one, and I did not know what to expect. To my relief, I was graciously welcomed by all, and especially by Jack. He told me that he was glad to have another man in the group because fellow UCOVers had been teasing him about being in a group they referred to as Jack's harem. Now, as an aside, I'm not sure he didn't think that was all that bad, so but we'll leave it at that. And a few weeks later, while leaving a group meeting at Fran Vanacek's home, I noticed Jack was about to get into his white Corvette convertible, which you've heard about before. Jack absolutely beamed when I told him I was also a car guy and was wondering if I might sit in the driver's seat of his chariot for just one moment to see how it felt. I learned more about Jack as time went on, and when our group met down at his and Jeannie's home in Northport, I got to see some of his artwork, which was on display. I was so impressed that Jack, the consummate scientist, inventor, and holder of many patents, was at the same time a fine artist. I found over the years that although Jack's and my beliefs were alike in some ways, but divergent in others, we were able to agree to disagree with the utmost of mutual respect. I thank Jack for helping me recognize that I could not have gained very much by being in a group composed entirely of persons like me. I am grateful for having known and spent time with Jack, for his sharing wisdom he had accumulated over his many years, and for truly exemplifying a life well lived.
Am I close enough?
Yeah.
We can hear everybody? Well, listen, we all know Jack. You know how nice it was to be with him and to be friendly with him. But I want to tell you something special about him. And that is that Jack was multi-talented. He was quiet about it, but the man had many skills. This, I think, has something to do with all of us and people everywhere. Jack had it in him what he wanted to do, and he did it. That's the thing of it, he did it. And the thing that has to do with all of us and that sharpens what he did is that I think many, many people, as they grow up and as they become who they are, there's something in there they want to do. There's something in there they think they can do. but they don't do it. They don't do it because our lives are very full, very often very stressful, very complicated, and very important, and of course very rewarding also. And somehow that thing in there that says, I need to do this, you ought to do it, you're smart enough, you're talented enough, you can sing, you could run the marathon, you could do anything that came into your head. But what happens is that many of us hit middle age and we go to parties and somebody says, well, I really did know all about that and I could have written the book. But, or I could have run the marathon. But, or I could have sung, not just in the choir, but stood up and sung by myself. But I coulda, and I shoulda, but I didn't. And the difference between so many of us, and I'm not saying anybody in here, but people all over, is that he did it. Jack, I think when he made up his mind to do something that he wanted to do, if he did not already know how to do it, he found out how to do it. And then he would go and do. Go and do. There was no nonsense about it. It turned out good. I remember one time we went to a party. Jeannie and Jack gave a great, it was supposed to be a meeting of the church group, our individual group. Well, it was really a terrific party. And somewhere along, we started to talk about what Jack could do. Now here I have to show you a terrible weakness and ask forgiveness. But Jack got out a box, and one of us, not I, sat on the sofa, opened the box, everybody stood around and looked in at the artifacts that he had made. And we all went, oh, you know, oh, they really, I remember how well they were made. That thought, how well they were made. But I have to tell you that here today, things are not as snap, crackle, and pop up here as they used to be. And I do not remember exactly what was in the box, just that we admired it. And then I learned later from Jeannie that in earlier days, probably before my time, he was a sculptor and he was a painter. And he did whatever came to him that he needed to do. And I think that is a terrific big plus for anybody. I think it is possibly rare. And I congratulate him even now that he did what he needed to do, and he did it well. I think there was another thing. Among the things that he did a most unusual thing. He did counting cross-stitch. Now, there weren't very many men in those days who would stand up and do embroidery. But Jack had the nerve to do it, he wanted to do it, and he did it. And I think another thing he did was when he got quite old and he was still driving and driving good, he wanted a new car. Did he get a nice, quiet, old gentleman's car? He got a white Corvette. And he drove it as long as he could. I think we all have to do a lot of yeses and nos in our lives, and they are not all easy ones. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. But I tell you, with all the talents that he had and all the talents that he used, he had one great talent that went over all of the others. And I think that was that Jack knew what he had to do, and he stood up and he said yes to life. And we will miss that spirit. Thank you.
I have to follow Grace. That's going to be difficult.
Yeah, come use a mic because we're live streaming.
Certainly. Okay. Hi, everybody. I can't believe I'm back this soon. Oh, my goodness. Boy, my granddad would have been so happy to hear all of these wonderful, wonderful things. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeremy James. I am the grandchild of James G. Smith, the son of Gerald Robert Smith, and the nephew of Judy Smith. So I am representing them here today. A little later, you get to hear my wife sing. I'm going to start with a letter from my Aunt Judy. Dear Pop, well, you did it. You met some amazing life goals. Your inventions were life-changing for a lot of people who will never even know your name. In your first job at Wright Aeronautical during World War II, you figured out why brand new planes were crashing at takeoff. Your company knew the engines were fine when they left the factory, but somehow once they reached their final destination and were fueled up and ready to go, they didn't, with disastrous results. You were the one who figured out the preservative used in the transportation process was the culprit and changed the formula, much to the appreciation of many pilots whose lives were saved. Or your work with DuPont Company, which netted you a total of 10 patents and the highest technical title, Engineering Fellow. Thanks for fixing the machine that put the bristles into the Reach toothbrush. America is smiling back at you for that one. The story I like best was when you told us about designing a new machine to produce Tyvek. Your plywood mock-up could produce material that was more variable in size. It could make sheets that could be made wider, narrower, thicker, thinner, with a better quality control than the real machine. And with all that, it was faster too. For years, I had a real sense of pride every time I rode past a house under construction and saw it wrapped in Tyvek. There are many people who don't know who to thank for helping to make their houses wind and waterproof. So, thanks, Pop. You achieved so many life goals that the rest of us can only dream about. At age 82, when golfing, you shot under your age, an 81. Yeah, and you got a hole-in-one one year and won the club championship when you and Jay teamed up. That was a good story. Retold it at many family functions, for sure. You got to travel abroad, take many road trips in the U.S., fly a plane and sail your own yacht up and down the Chesapeake. You were a sculptor, a painter, a jeweler, a carpenter, a furniture maker, tooled leather, and did countless cross-stitch. One of your most enviable talents. You knew just how far you could push an automobile before it needed to go to the auto shop for repairs. You achieved the goal of living past 100. 102 is pretty good, I think. And you lived long enough to vote in the 2020 presidential election for a fellow Delawarean. I'll miss and love you. That was a letter from Judy. I remember traveling up and down on that yacht. That's great. I remember his 100th birthday. every time I went to visit the security guard, didn't matter what security guard. I said, "Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm here to see Jack Smith." They'd be like, "Jack, he's our hero." And he was my hero too, and my role model in a lot of ways I didn't even realize because I was just a little kid. But, you know, I was always watching him and soaking up those good life lessons. One of those lessons was read, study. He was always in his study as a kid and learning about the many different things. I would go into his office, and it was just this magical place. He showed me one time he was developing a little plastic tube. It was microscopic. You couldn't even see it, but there was a big magnifying glass on his desk, and he was like, "See, Jeremy, this will take a laser into this conductor and power this other thing that I can't remember the name of." But it was just amazing the things he would invent and then get a patent for. I would walk around the house and I would look at a painting of a duck, and my dad would be like, "Yeah, your granddad painted that." You know, as a little kid, every other piece of art in the house, whether it was a sculptor or a wood carving, it was like, "Yeah, your granddad did that." So that was the other life lesson that Rose so eloquently taught us. You can do anything you set your mind to, and he certainly did a lot of that. Work hard was another one. He and my grandmother would throw these fabulous cocktail parties, and so I would clean the house for $5 an hour or whatever it was, and save up to buy my own toys. I would be the coat check guy, and I would stand there and collect everybody's coats and put them on the bed and, as they were having their cocktail parties, and then I would bring them back out as the people came back. And I was always rewarded, and they would tip me on top of that. So I was doing it. I thought, all right, work hard. That's great. But also, he taught me about life-work balance. I remember, and just by observing, just overhearing, he would say, God, these guys at this party, all they're doing is talking about work. Which is why many times, if you went to a party, you'd see him in the company of women. Circle of women around, always entertaining. It's like they're funnier. They talk, what they can share. Really, really fun. He also taught me about marriage. I always wanted a relationship like my grandmother and my grandfather had. They loved each other very much, and they had traditional male and female roles, but they got along fabulously. And I joke, my wife and I, because they used to have political differences. He, at some point, back in those days, he was a little more on the conservative side, and she was working as a social worker, and so they would have very interesting discussions. And like it's been said before, I think we need a lot more of that in this day and age, to listen to an opposing view. But they used to giggle. They were like, "Yep, we went to the polling place and we canceled each other out." Can you imagine? In this day and age, it was just wonderful. So in the times when my wife and I get into those discussions, I was like, "Hey, my grandparents did it." And it's okay. It's okay. He was amazing. He really, really was. When my grandmother passed on, I was like, do I need to, I'll come down, I'll visit more, which I got to do. But then trying to schedule a visit was difficult because he was busy. Your community really took amazing care of him, and he was, he's like, "Today we're having a dinner, or starting at one house and going to the next," or "I'm part of the soup group." And then, of course, meeting Jeannie and your lovely family, and the way our families merged, and really I just have so much love and respect for the way you guys were together, and you took care of them, and you showed them love, and all of you did, and you could tell even by this turnout how well loved he was, and what an effect and influence his memory will have on all of us, and how we will hold him in our hearts. So it really is a celebration. One of my favorites was when he would captain a boat, and I was just a school kid, but I used to get to go with him on these big trips up and down the intercoastal waterway. And I would like to end with a poem that my father had written for him during that time. And this is called The Incredible Captain Jack by G.R. Smith. That incredible Captain Jack, he sailed down to Nag's Head and back. He's always at home where'er he may roam, though the winds they be fresh or be slack. Now he's giggled with gulls at the gales, been dauntless where others have quailed. He's a lusty old tar, say the girls at the bar, who shared secrets with ospreys and whales. He's a rounder, a pirate, that Jack, who jumps up like a whip with a crack. At the sound of a party, wades in double hearty, oh, the girls dearly love Rascal Jack. Well, he runs with the sea and the stars. Some do quake at the sight of his spars. But the girls, they still smile at the old crocodile at the country clubs, gin mills, and bars. When Jackie retired from the sea, he said to his wife, "You and me, we'll go down to the shore, and I'll ramble no more. I'll not rape, pillage, plunder, you'll see." The shack on the sand, it was fair. Balmy breezes, they played with his hair. But Jack muttered, "Alas, I can't sit on my ass. I believe that I'll take to the air." Incorrigible Captain Jack. Once launched, he will never turn back. He'll laugh and he'll leer and he'll turn his deaf ear and he'll sing a sea shanty and crack him a beer. Indefatigable Captain Jack.
Come on down. Jeremy mentioned the 100th birthday, Jack's 100th birthday, and I think there are videos of that 100th birthday out.
Yes, afterwards over
Okay.
here in the corner, I'll
Good.
have 100th birthday party video going. So I know most of you were there. So hi everybody, I'm Jeannie. I'm Paula, Jeannie's daughter. And I'm gonna read a poem that Mom wrote for Jack, but just before we do that, I just wanted to read a little blurb. By the way, McIntyres are weepers, so just ignore me. Jack, I knew the man who loved my mother, the man who would tell me stories of his life, of his inventions, travels with Joe and his children. I knew the man who loved his criminals and bourbon Manhattans. I knew the man who was an amazing inventor and engineer, but was also an artist. Jack had an artistic vision of unique jewelry, sculpture, and painting, and a man who loved his crock pot. I am forever blessed to have known Jack and will carry his winks in my heart forever. Okay. Goodbye, my love, goodbye. Jack and Jeannie went up the hill, they said, to fetch a pail of water. Jack said, "Jeannie, move in with me," and Jeannie said, "I think I oughta." At the crest of the hill, they saw memories of Jack. They were dancing in the garden out back. The memories were happy, the memories were good. Life was well lived with Joe and the kids. From sports to the shore, life was never a bore. Jack and Jeannie together 15 years. Shared love, laughter, and delight in family and friends, and were happy till the end. Forever blessed. And a quote from Lost Horizon by James Hilton. There are moments in every man's life when he glimpses the eternal. Goodbye, my love, goodbye.
As we remember Jack today, one of the things that seems to be on everybody's hearts is a life well lived, and how he just took every moment, everything, and just lived it to the fullest. And for someone with a life well lived, we only hope and pray and want to send them into that eternal, wonderful place for those selfless people, for the people who put others before themselves, for the people who live their lives intentionally and selflessly. You that have been faithful over small things shall someday rule the universe. Our greatness here on earth is now measured only by how well we learn to serve. Then you can enter the joy of the Lord. Step inside, inherit the kingdom prepared for you. Enter that rest, and there you'll always abide. You're my faithful servant, come on through. If you've ever given bread to the hungry, that's how the blessed Lord is fed. And if you've ever really said, I love you, Lord, you've shown love to a neighbor instead. Then you can enter the joy of the Lord. Step inside, inherit the kingdom prepared for you. Enter that rest, and there you'll always abide. You're my faithful servant, come on through. You're my faithful servant, for you've clothed the naked, given drink to the thirsty, and you fed the hungry. I have a word for you.
Blue watch them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Well, I see skies of blue and I see clouds of white and the brightness of day. I like the dark and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, singing, how do you do? They really say, I love you. I hear babies cry and I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than we'll know, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Someday I wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where trouble melts like a lemon drops high above the chimney top. That's where you find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow, way up high. The dream that you dare to, why, oh why can't I,
Actually, being honest about it, I loved every minute.
What Jack said was, if I'm being honest about it, I loved every minute. In a few minutes after this service, you're invited to join us out on the lanai for drinks and snacks. And we, as Paula mentioned, will have the 100th birthday video out there. We'll start this video, this slideshow in here on a loop, so you're welcome to float, be in either place, or move back and forth. Let's join in a spirit of prayer and meditation together. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, we give thanks for the life of Jack Smith. We are so grateful that we're the ones that Jack lived with and loved and walked among. His light was so strong, he let it shine on so many of us over all the years. and we're now the ones through whom his light continues to shine. Great Spirit, we ask your presence with us, his family and friends, as we walk through coming days without him, but remembering and continuing to tell the story and supporting and helping each other through good times and bad. This benediction from the Reverend Barbara Peskin. Because of those who came before, we are, in spite of their failings, we believe. Because of and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream. Let us go, remembering to praise, to live in the moment, to love mightily, and to bow to the mystery. Shalom, salam, amen, and blessed be. And Marianne has a postlude.
The one thing that I did not hear you mention was that Jeannie and Jack loved to go ballroom dancing. And so I'm going to play you out with Cheek to Cheek. To reach the highest peak, but it all doesn't seem like anything like dancing cheek to cheek. Oh, I love to go out fishing in a river or a creek, but I don't enjoy it half as much as dancing cheek to cheek.